Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something. Well, it's a really elegant mental model, a kind of shortcut to success used by some incredibly successful people like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett.
Right. And it's funny because the concept itself seems almost too simple, almost obvious. Yet most people really don't approach problems this way.
Exactly. It's called inversion. So instead of pouring all your energy into figuring out what you need to do to win,
You flip it. You ask, okay, what are the things, the decisions, the actions, the habits that would absolutely guarantee I fail? What do I need to avoid at all costs?
Munger had that perfect line for it. He gave credit to the German mathematician Carl Gustav Jacobi, but Munger's version is just so memorable.
Oh yeah, the all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there.
That's the one. It just perfectly captures the idea.
It really does. And that's our focus for this deep dive. We've looked at a stack of sources, and they overwhelmingly point to this. Looking at problems backward, figuring out what not to do, is often way more effective than just chasing brilliance. It kind of forces you to be objective.
So yeah, we're going to unpack how this whole thinking backward philosophy really works as a kind of universal tool for smart decision making.
And what's amazing is how old this idea is. It's not some, modern business fad. The guy Munger mentioned, Jacobi, he was advocating man must immer, Karen, invert, always invert back in the 1800s.
On math problems.
For hard math problems, yeah.
Yeah.
He found that if you start with the answer or work backward from the known, the solution often becomes much clearer, much easier to see.
Okay, but I can hear someone thinking, if you apply that to life, isn't that just being negative all the time? Like dwelling on what could go wrong?
See, that's the key distinction. It's not really pessimism. It's more like strategic planning through anticipation. And you see this same idea, this thread, running through ancient philosophy too.
You mean the Stoics?
Exactly. People like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, they practiced something called premeditatio malorum.
The premeditation of evils. Sounds pretty intense.
It does sound heavy, yeah. But it was incredibly practical. They'd consciously think about the worst things that could happen, losing their status, their wealth, facing physical pain.
Why? To make themselves miserable?
No, not at all. It was for two main reasons. First, to kind of mentally rehearse it, so if something bad did happen, the shock wouldn't be as paralyzing. And second, more importantly, to figure out right now what they could do to prevent those bad outcomes, or at least mitigate them.
So it's Jacobi's math trick, but for living a better life.
Precisely. And Munger just took this ancient wisdom, this mathematical tool, and applied it squarely to the messy world of business and investing, which led to his famous line.
Avoiding stupidity is easier than seeking brilliance.
That's it. You don't have to hit home runs constantly. You just have to avoid striking out spectacularly. Avoid the big, dumb mistakes.
Okay, let's make this practical. Let's talk about what this means for you, the listener. Because let's face it, in most things we do, we're probably amateurs, not world-class pros.
Right. And this brings us to that great analogy, the loser's game, which Charles Ellis wrote about, building on Simon Romo's work on tennis. Romo saw two kinds of games being played.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the winner's game. This is played by the pros. Think top tennis players.
Like Federer or Serena Williams.
Exactly. In their matches, points are actively won. Through amazing shots, incredible skill, strategy. Romo found something like 80% of points are won because one player did something brilliant.
Okay, makes sense. So what's the other game?
The other game is the loser's game. This is what happens when amateurs like you and me probably play tennis.
Uh-oh. I think I know where this is going.
Yeah. Romo found that in amateur tennis, about 80% of the points aren't won by skill. They're lost through mistakes. Hitting the ball into the net, hitting it out of bounds, double faults, unforced errors.
So the winning strategy for an amateur isn't trying to hit amazing winners.
Nope. It's simply to focus on not messing up. Keep the ball in play consistently. Let your opponent be the one to make the error.
That's actually profound. Because in so many areas, like managing money or even health or career stuff, most of us are playing that loser's game. We win by not losing, not by being brilliant.
Absolutely. So if you invert the problem for investing, instead of asking, how do I get amazing returns, ask, how do I absolutely ruin my returns? The big mistakes become glaringly obvious.
And it's usually not missing out on the next hot stock, is it?
Rarely. It's the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Like paying ridiculously high fees and taxes year after year.
Yeah, I saw that stat in the sources. It's genuinely staggering. $1 million portfolio, if it has 1% annual fees versus 0.5% over 20 years, that 0.5% difference costs you over $300,000 in growth. assuming a 7% return.
It's compound leakage, just silently eroding your capital. That's a massive avoidable mistake. And then there's market timing.
Oh, the temptation to jump in and out, predict the peaks and valleys.
Right. Munger and Buffett just inverted that completely. Buffett always says something like, lethargy bordering on sloth remains the cornerstone of our investment style. Or, inactivity is usually the best decision.
Because trying to time the market means you have to be right twice, right?
Yeah.
Getting out near the top in A&D, getting back in near the bottom?
Exactly. The odds of doing that correctly even once are tiny. Doing it consistently, forget about it. You're basically setting yourself up for failure.
We even see this kind of error with big institutions like pension funds switching managers all the time.
Yeah, chasing past performance. They fire a manager who's done poorly recently and hire someone who just had a great run.
Yeah.
But the studies often show the fired managers actually do better afterward than the new hires.
They're reacting instead of inverting and asking, what's the real cost of all this churning and chasing?
Precisely. Now, let's look at how technical experts use this. Like financial analysts valuing a company. They use inversion with something called a discounted cash flow, or DCF, model.
Wait, I thought DCF was about projecting future cash flows forward to find today's value. How do you invert that?
You're right, that's the standard way. But the inverted approach starts with the current stock price. Let's say a stock is trading at $100. The analyst works backward using the DCF framework to figure out what assumptions about the business like revenue growth, profit margins, how long they can keep it up, the market must be baking into that $100 price.
I get it. So it's like saying, okay, the market thinks this is worth $100. What crazy level of performance does the company need to achieve to actually justify that price?
Exactly. It becomes a reality check. The analyst can then ask, is it plausible for this company to grow profits by, say, 30% a year for the next decade? Because that's what this price implies. If the answer is probably not, then you know the stock is likely overvalued. It's a way to find the flaws in the market's optimism.
So inversion isn't just personal, it scales up. It can save or sink huge organizations. Let's talk about IBM back in the early 90s. That's a classic turnaround story.
Oh, absolutely. IBM was, well, it was on the ropes. Lost something like $8 billion in 1993 alone. Stock price cratered to around $12.
And the conventional wisdom, the forward-looking plan everyone suggested was,
Break it up. Dismantle the giant. Turn it into smaller, nimbler companies focused on hardware, maybe software. That was the obvious path.
but the new CEO, Lou Gerstner, he inverted that, didn't he? His big move wasn't deciding what to build, but deciding what not to break.
Exactly. He decided to keep IBM whole. He saw that its real unique value wasn't just making boxes. It was being the integrator, the service provider that could handle massive, complex IT problems for huge corporations.
So he inverted the question. Instead of how do we make better hardware, it was more like, what's the single biggest mistake we could make right now? And the answer was,
Destroying our unique position as a total solutions provider. So they shifted focus dramatically away from just hardware towards services, towards integration, towards open standards. It was pure inversion thinking.
and the results were pretty stunning. By 2002, they weren't losing $8 billion. They were making $8 billion in profit. Stock price was back over $100. They avoided the seemingly obvious but ultimately fatal move.
Now let's flip to the other side. What happens when inversion isn't applied, especially at a national level? Argentina's long-running economic struggles offer a really stark example, a sort of cautionary tale.
Yeah, it seems like a case study in systematically doing the things you should avoid.
That's a good way to put it. Years of massive government spending way beyond their means, letting inflation just run wild over 100% at times, constantly printing money and eroding the value of the peso.
Which leads to a total lack of trust, right? People just ditch the local currency as fast as possible.
Instantly, everyone tries to get dollars or something stable. These aren't small policy tweaks gone wrong. These are fundamental errors in managing an economy, failing to control debt, failing to maintain a stable currency, basic stuff you absolutely must avoid.
And the human cost is just immense. Poverty rates shooting past 50%, chronic unemployment, constant instability. It really drives home the point. If a huge system like a country can fail by ignoring these basic what to avoid rules, individuals can absolutely wreck themselves by ignoring their own versions, like chronic debt or out-of-control spending.
It's the same principle, just scaled differently.
So why does thinking this way, thinking negatively or backward, actually work so well? Let's go back to Munger for a moment. That story about him being a meteorologist in World War II is quite something.
Oh, it's one of the best illustrations. He's a young guy. His job is critical, figuring out safe flight paths for pilots. But he didn't just ask, how do I keep them safe?
He asked the opposite, didn't he?
He inverted it completely. He asked himself, how could I kill these pilots? What are the easiest ways to guarantee a fatal mission?
That's, wow, a morbidly effective approach.
Totally. And he figured there were two main reliable ways to kill them. Get their plane into severe icing conditions it couldn't handle, or simpler still, make them run out of gas far from a base.
So by focusing obsessively on avoiding just those two critical dangers?
He automatically became a highly effective meteorologist. He ensured safety by rigorously avoiding the paths to disaster.
And he used a similar inversion trick later as a lawyer, right? With that land valuation case, the three-dimensional thing.
Yeah, another brilliant example. His client owned some hilly ranch land, and a utility company needed an easement to put up towers. A very respected appraiser looked at it in, quote, two dimensions. Basically, the acreage the towers would physically occupy, and said the damage was worth maybe $125,000.
Seems straightforward. Land area used equals value lost.
But Munger didn't just look at what the utility was taking. He inverted and looked at what future potential the towers were destroying. He realized those towers would freeze the grade of the land.
Meaning?
Meaning you couldn't do the really profitable kind of development on hilly land, which is
Right.
three-dimensional, cutting down the hilltops and using the dirt to fill in the valleys, creating large, flat, valuable parcels. The power lines made that impossible forever.
Ah, so he changed the question from what's the value of the land used to what's the value of the lost future potential.
Exactly. And that simple shift in perspective, that inversion, turned a $125,000 claim into a $600,000 settlement. A huge difference, all from thinking backward about what was being prevented.
It makes you wonder why this isn't our default mode. There's actually a solid scientific reason why this works so well, isn't there? Tied to Karl Popper and the idea of falsification.
Yes, absolutely. Popper's work on the philosophy of science provides the bedrock. Falsification basically says it's much easier and scientifically more rigorous to disprove a hypothesis than to definitively prove it true.
Like the classic black swan example.
Right. To prove all swans are white, you'd need to observe every single swan that ever existed or will exist. Impossible. But to disprove it, you just need to find one single black swan.
So inversion taps into that power of disproof. It's easier to identify the ways an idea will definitely fail than to prove it will absolutely succeed.
Precisely. You're looking for the black swans in your plan, the potential failure points. It's a more robust way to test ideas.
Okay, so let's give people a tool they can use right now, something concrete based on this. The failure premortem.
Yes, this is such a practical application. You take a project you're working on, could be anything, a business launch, a personal goal, buying a house, and you fast forward in your mind. Imagine it's 6 months from now and the whole thing has been a complete disaster. Failed utterly.
Okay, then what?
Then you write the story of why it failed. Be brutally honest. What went wrong? What assumptions were flawed? Who didn't you talk to? What risks did you ignore?
That forces you to really confront the potential downsides head on instead of just hoping for the best. It fights that natural optimism bias.
Exactly. You become your own toughest critic before you've invested too much time or money. You identify the potential killers, Munger style.
So wrapping this up, it feels like inversion isn't just a trick. It's almost a necessary skill for thinking clearly, for challenging our own biases.
It really is.
Yeah.
And you see how it underpinned the Buffett-Munger partnership at Berkshire Hathaway. Munger was often that voice of inversion, the skeptic asking, how could this go wrong? What are we missing? What's the dumb mistake we might be making?
Which kept them focused on avoiding major errors, avoiding the siren song of complex or risky bets, and led to that incredible long-term success built on buying great businesses and just holding them, avoiding the activity trap.
Avoiding the loser's game mistakes.
So here's a final thought for you, the listener. Before you spend too much time figuring out how to make more money or achieve that next big thing, try inverting.
Ask yourself, what are the absolutely guaranteed ways I could destroy my financial health? Or my career? Or maybe even an important relationship?
The answers that pop up, like, consistently spending more than you earn, racking up high interest debt, neglecting key people, breaking trust, those are your critical failure points.
Identify those 1, 2, maybe 3 things, the things you absolutely must avoid. Focus on eliminating those first. If you just stop doing the things that guarantee failure,
Then forward progress, even if it feels slow sometimes, becomes almost automatic. That's the real power of thinking backward. That's inversion.